The day I lost my baby, I learned I was never my husband's real wife. That's the line that keeps echoing in my mind, long after the doctors stopped speaking in soft tones and long after the nurses stopped touching my shoulder the way people do when they don't know what else to offer. Some words attach themselves to your bones. Some truths settle under your skin like a bruise you can't cover. And that day, sitting on the edge of my mother-in-law's velvet sofa with the late afternoon sun spilling through her lace curtains, I realized I was hearing a truth that would tear open the seams of everything I believed about my marriage and about myself. The house was quiet the way expensive houses are, that thick, layered quiet that absorbs your grief rather than echoing it. A clock ticked in the corner, a slow steady sound that almost mocked the pace at which my life had just snapped. My hands were trembling in my lap. My fingers kept searching for something, fabric, comfort, a place to rest. But there was nothing. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, sat across from me with her back impossibly straight, her ankles crossed like she was posing for a portrait. She wore a gold brooch shaped like a lily, the same one she wore the day I married her son. Funny, isn't it? The smallest things come back like they're stitched into the moment you break. I don't know what I expected from her. Maybe a touch on my hand. Maybe a quiet "I'm sorry." Maybe even just a long, human breath that showed she had space inside her heart for my pain. But instead, she cleared her throat, a short, almost annoyed sound, and said, "Let's keep this matter private. I don't want this getting around the family." Matter. She called my miscarriage a matter. My breath caught in my throat. I lost a child, I whispered, as if reminding her of the reality would soften her. Your grandchild. I needed someone to talk to. Her eyes stayed still, unreadable. Like the grief was happening to someone else in another room. Some things, she said, are better kept quiet. Especially when they touch the family name. Something inside me twisted sharply. My belly felt hollow. My chest felt tight. "I'm trying to heal," I murmured. "I just wanted support." That's when she put her teacup down, gently, almost ceremoniously, and leaned forward, her voice lowering into that tone older women use when they've decided you need to hear the truth, even if it stings. "You're speaking as if you are my son's wife," she said. "As if you hold a rightful place in this family. You don't." My ears rang. What?" I asked, feeling my pulse throb in my jaw. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're not his legal wife," she said calmly, as if she were telling me the weather forecast. That contract marriage he had years ago, it was never annulled. I felt the room tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" I whispered. But my voice was gone, thin, paper dry. Because deep down, in some quiet place inside me, I already knew she wasn't lying. Daniel wouldn't. He told me that was over. He told me it was dissolved. Eleanor didn't blink. Not once. She simply folded her hands in her lap and said, "He lied." 2 words. Just 2. And the life I had built, the home I decorated, the routines I created, the marriage I nurtured, began to unravel thread by thread. I felt something warm roll down my face, not a tear, but disbelief. Shock comes in strange forms. My mother-in-law's voice softened then, but not out of kindness. More like pity. A pity that felt cold. "You must understand," she said, "our family is particular. Legacy matters. Appearances matter. And besides." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "Given your recent situation, it may be best for you not to attach yourself too deeply." My recent situation. My miscarriage. The child I carried, wanted, dreamed of. A pain throbbed behind my ribs. "Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Because," she said, leaning back, "I don't want you embarrassing yourself by claiming a place that isn't yours." A soft sound slipped out of my chest, something between a choke and a gasp. I wasn't angered yet. Grief hadn't turned to fire yet. I was simply hollow. "Does Daniel know you're telling me this?" I asked. She lifted one eyebrow. "Whether he does or doesn't is irrelevant. What matters is that you're aware of your standing. My standing. My place. As if I were a guest overstaying her welcome. My palms were damp. My breathing uneven. I'm his wife, I said quietly, as if repeating it could anchor me. I'm his wife. We had a ceremony. We exchanged vows. Her lips curled just slightly. You had a wedding, she corrected. You didn't have a marriage. My heart lurched in my chest. She didn't stop there. And frankly, she added, I don't think Daniel ever intended you to be his wife in the legal sense. He was protecting you. Protecting me. From what? Or from whom? Protecting me how? I asked through clenched teeth. He knew, she said, that you weren't prepared for the responsibilities that come with our family's name. And now, after this loss. Her eyes flicked to my stomach. Just briefly. But long enough to slice. It might be a sign that you're not meant to carry the family forward. The breath left my lungs. Like someone had reached inside my chest and pressed down, hard. I stood. Too quickly. My legs wobbled. She didn't stand. She just watched me, calm, steady, unbothered. Don't do anything rash, she said, lifting her teacup again. We can discuss things properly when you're feeling more collected. Collected. As if grief was something you could sweep into a drawer. I swallowed hard, the taste of metal rising in the back of my throat. I need to talk to my husband, I said, my voice thin. You may try, she said coolly, but I doubt he'll want to revisit old paperwork when you're in this state. That was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet. Not clarity either. Just survival. I walked toward the door, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Dear, she called after me, don't mention any of this outside the family. For your sake. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. For my sake, I repeated softly. Not for yours. Her silence answered more than her words ever could. When I stepped outside, the air hit me like a slap, cold, real, unforgiving. I staggered onto her porch, gripping the railing as if the world were spinning. The afternoon sun was warm, but inside me everything felt winter cold. I wasn't Daniel's legal wife. His mother had just confirmed it without flinching. And my miscarriage, the baby I lost, had become nothing more than a reason for her to dismiss me. I walked to my car slowly, feeling like I was floating above my own body. My hands trembled so violently I could barely fit the key into the ignition. When the engine finally started, I didn't drive. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breath. My mind replayed every moment of my marriage. Every kiss, every fight, every promise. As if the memories themselves were suddenly suspect. Who was I to him? What was I to him? And why did his mother get to decide which version of our life was real? One truth kept echoing in the quiet space of my car. If the marriage wasn't annulled, then legally, I wasn't his wife. But if I wasn't his wife, what was I? The next thought came like a whisper from somewhere deep inside me. If she told me this so easily, what else was she hiding? Before everything shattered, before the miscarriage, before the contract marriage confession, before my mother-in-law stripped my identity down to a technicality, life was quiet in the way only ordinary happiness can be. It wasn't perfect. But it felt steady. Predictable. Kind. If anyone had asked me 2 months earlier who I was, I would have said, confidently, even proudly, I'm Daniel's wife. Back then, those words felt warm. They fit me like a soft sweater, familiar, comforting, safe. I clung to them like they were part of my own name. Mornings in our home were slow and soft. The kind of mornings you don't appreciate until you lose them. I'd wake up first, the soft glow from our east-facing window spilling across the room like a thin golden blanket. Daniel slept like he lived, quietly, carefully, never taking up more space than necessary. I used to think that meant he was gentle. Now I wonder if it meant he wasn't fully there. Back then, I would slip out of bed, put on my robe, and shuffle into the kitchen still half asleep. I'd open the blinds. The light would slip in like a secret, climbing over the countertops and warming the hardwood. The sound of the kettle heating, that soft metallic hum mixed with the faint creak of our old house waking up with us. I'd make tea for myself and coffee for him. 1 spoon of sugar. No cream. Always the same. Sometimes he'd wander in with sleep still on his face, hair mussed, eyes soft. He'd wrap his arms around my waist from behind and rest his chin on my shoulder like we were the only 2 people awake in the world. He'd say, breathing me in. You smell like home. And I'd laugh, because who smells like home at 6 in the morning? But he said it often enough that I started believing him. He loved routines. Reserved parking spot at work. Same barber every 2 weeks. Same brand of shirts. Same Tuesday grocery run. And me. I was woven into those routines like a thread he kept pulling tight. We had Thursday takeout nights, not fancy, just the small Thai place with the handwritten menu and the elderly couple who always smiled at us. We had Sunday evenings where he insisted on cooking dinner his way, which basically meant he used 3 times the amount of butter anyone should ever use in a meal, but I didn't complain. He kissed me on the forehead every night before turning off the lamp. He used to whisper, "Good night, sweetheart," like the words themselves held us together. Routine can be a kind of love. Or a disguise for something else. But I didn't know that then. People assume tension with in-laws starts early. That from the beginning you know who dislikes you and who doesn't. But Eleanor, my mother-in-law, wasn't openly unkind at first. She wasn't warm. But she wasn't cruel. She was strategic. She had the kind of smile that didn't touch her eyes. The kind of posture that made you sit up straighter around her. The kind of tone that sounded polite if you didn't listen too closely, but clipped and cold if you did. From the beginning she treated me less like a daughter-in-law and more like a tenant renting space in her expectations. She'd say things like, "Daniel likes his shirts pressed with starch. I'm sure you'll learn." Or, "Our family hosts brunch on the first Sunday of every month. Dress appropriately." Or my personal favorite, "Marriage is demanding. I hope you're prepared." Not hateful. Not venomous. Just tilted. Like everything she said had a sharp edge tucked beneath it. Daniel always brushed it off. "That's just how she is," he'd say. "She's old-fashioned. Don't take it personally." But I did. Because women feel the things other women hide. Still, I tried. I tried in the way women try when they want to belong, when they want the mother of the man they love to approve of them. I brought her gifts on holidays. Baked her favorite pound cake for her birthday. Listened to her talk about the family's reputation like it was a fragile antique vase she expected me to hold with 2 hands. She never thanked me. But she never refused me either. I thought that meant we were finding a rhythm. I didn't know she'd been judging me from a distance, waiting for a weakness she could use to push me out. I remember the moment vividly. It was a Wednesday morning, early, still grey outside. I had been feeling off for weeks, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. My emotions were unpredictable and raw. Daniel joked that I was just stressed, which I brushed off. But something felt different. Something felt tender inside me. I took a test. Alone. In the bathroom with the chipped tile and the soft buzz of the exhaust fan filling the silence. 2 lines. Faint but there. I sat on the floor, my heart pounding in my throat, my hands shaking. A feeling washed over me, one I still struggle to name. Something between joy and fear. Hope and disbelief. I wasn't expecting a child. But the moment I saw those lines, I wanted that child more than anything I had ever wanted. When I told Daniel, he froze. Just for a second. So quick I nearly missed it. Then he hugged me tightly and said all the right words. "We can do this. I'll take care of you. This is our new chapter." But something about his smile didn't reach his eyes that day. I brushed it off. A new baby is overwhelming for any man. At least, that's what I told myself. People talk about miscarriage like it's a medical event. A moment. A procedure. Something that happens and then passes. But a miscarriage is a quiet grief that sits in the corners of your home. It lingers in the hallway. It curls up at the foot of your bed. It hides in the moments people expect you to smile. I remember the pain, sharp, sudden, like someone twisting something deep inside me. I remember the bathroom floor cold beneath my knees. I remember my own breath, panicked and uneven. And I remember Daniel pacing, his face pale, his hands shaking as he called the doctor. The hospital lights were unbearably bright. The nurse's voice was soft. The doctor looked sad in the way people look when they've shared this news too many times. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." And the world tilted. My body felt hollow. My heart felt heavy. My hope felt broken. Daniel held my hand the whole time, but something about his grip felt distant. Like he was comforting me out of duty, not love. Still, he stayed. And in that moment, that was enough. Grief makes you grateful for crumbs. Because Daniel wasn't talking. Because he started avoiding the subject entirely. Because he threw himself into work and left me to carry the silence alone. And because, foolishly, naively, I thought Eleanor would understand. Pain looks different on different women, but I thought humanity was universal. I thought losing my baby would soften her toward me. I thought she'd see me as a woman, not an outsider. I thought grief would make us the same. I was wrong. Instead of compassion, I got condemnation. Instead of warmth, I got frost. Instead of support, I got the truth. I wasn't her son's legal wife. My place in the family was conditional. My pain was an inconvenience. My miscarriage was a stain on their legacy. That revelation didn't just hurt. It rewrote my entire past. It made my marriage feel counterfeit. But that was only the beginning. Because when I left her house that day, something else started to surface. A memory I had pushed aside. A moment I had forgotten. A detail that didn't make sense. Something that would lead me to the truth. Daniel wasn't just hiding a contract marriage. He was still tied to that woman in ways I never imagined. And I wasn't the only one he had lied to. People always imagine betrayal arrives loudly. A slammed door, a shouted confession, a dramatic scene worthy of a movie. But in real life, betrayal creeps in quietly. It tiptoes. It whispers. It shows up in details small enough to ignore, until they form a pattern you can't unsee. For me, the first clue wasn't a text message or a phone call. It wasn't lipstick on a collar or a late-night return. It was silence. Daniel's silence. A silence too heavy to be just grief. And too practiced to be new. After my miscarriage, I stayed home from work for a few weeks. The mornings that once hummed with gentle routine now felt still and hollow. The sun still filtered through the curtains, but it didn't warm me the same. Every room echoed. Daniel had been caring, at least at first. He brought me soup. Held my hand. Rubbed my back when I cried. But gradually, gently, quietly, he began slipping away. It showed in small ways. He started leaving earlier for work. Staying later. Sleeping on the very edge of the bed. Answering calls in the hallway instead of the living room. Not once did he raise his voice. Not once did he say something cruel. He just withdrew. Grief changes people. That's what I told myself. Except, he wasn't grieving the way I was. He wasn't grieving at all. His sadness felt performative. His sympathy felt timed. His distance felt familiar, like he was slipping into an old habit he'd practiced before. And that was what unsettled me most. One afternoon, maybe 2 weeks after Eleanor's revelation, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter. A pale blue envelope. Thick paper. Elegant script. Not the kind of thing we ever received. It was addressed to Daniel's full name. First, middle, last. But not to our home address. It said, "Forwarded per request." My stomach tightened. I shouldn't have touched it. I knew that. But pain makes you bold in strange ways. Grief rewires your boundaries. The envelope wasn't sealed properly, almost as if someone had opened it before forwarding it to him. So I slid out the letter. My breath caught. It was from a lawyer. A lawyer in another city. The same city where Daniel used to live during what he once referred to as a rough time in my 20s. The same city where his contract marriage had supposedly taken place. The letter was written in cold legal language. We still require confirmation of annulment documentation. We have not received signatures for dissolution. Contact us regarding the pending marital file. Marital file. Pending. Signatures. My throat dried. He had told me he ended that marriage before we met. He had told me everything was handled. He had sworn it was just paperwork. But the letter said otherwise. He had lied. Comfortably. Repeatedly. And possibly, recently. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it exactly where I found it. My hands were trembling. My breath was shallow. My heart felt like it was learning a new kind of beat. One that sounded more like warning. For years, Daniel rarely got phone calls after 9 p.m. He was predictable that way. But in the days after Eleanor's confession, the days after I found the lawyer's letter, his phone started buzzing more frequently. And every time, he stepped outside to take the call. Not into the hallway. Not into the bathroom. Outside. Into the cold night air. I started noticing things like. He lowered his voice. He stood with his back against the window. His shoulders hunched like he was bracing for something. He always said the same phrase, "I told you I'm handling it." Handling what? Handling who? One night, I stood behind the curtain, just far enough to see his silhouette on the porch. He was pacing. Fast. Agitated. I said, "I'm working on it." He hissed into the phone. "No, you don't get to pressure me right now. This is complicated." I pressed my hand to my chest. The ache was sharp, but not from miscarriage. This was a different kind of pain. One shaped like fear. I didn't want to assume the worst. But the worst had already made itself comfortable inside my house. Grief makes your mind foggy. But pain sharpens your memory in strange ways. One night over dinner, he said something that didn't fit. We were eating quietly. The clink of silverware. The faint sound of neighbors talking outside. The refrigerator humming. He was distant, as usual. Lost in thought. Then he said, "I have to go back to Riverside this weekend. There's something I need to take care of." Riverside. The city where his contract marriage had been filed. The city mentioned in the lawyer's letter. But he had told me years ago that he hadn't been back there in over a decade. I lifted my head slowly. "What's in Riverside?" I asked softly. He froze. Just for a moment. Barely noticeable unless you were watching closely. And I was. He blinked, recovered, and forced a casual tone. "Just some work stuff. Old files. Nothing serious. Work stuff. Old files." But at that moment, I remembered something very clearly. Daniel didn't keep old work files. He hated clutter. He shredded everything. My chest tightened. He must have felt my suspicion, because he quickly added, "It's only for a day. You don't need to come." That phrase, "You don't need to come," felt like a hand on my shoulder pushing me back. I lowered my eyes to my plate. "Okay," I said. But inside, something clicked into place. He wasn't going for work. He wasn't going for files. He was going because whatever, or whoever, was waiting for him in Riverside needed him to show up. The final clue arrived quietly. Late one night, I woke up thirsty. The kind of thirst that makes your throat feel dry and tight. Daniel wasn't in bed. The glow from the hallway slipped under the bedroom door. I walked out quietly, unsure if he was in the bathroom or pacing again. But he wasn't pacing. He was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the screen with an expression I hadn't seen before. Not guilt. Not panic. Fear. His thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't step any closer, didn't breathe too loudly. Then I heard a faint sound, his phone vibrating, and a message flashed across the screen before he quickly locked it. I only saw 3 words. 3 words that froze me in place. We need you. Not I need you. Not call me. Not it's urgent. We need you. Plural. A group. A family. Or a wife and child. I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. I tried to pretend I hadn't seen anything, but my breath gave me away. He startled, whipped his head toward me. Oh, hey, he said, too quickly. Couldn't sleep. His voice was sharp on the edges. Defensive. I nodded slowly. He clicked off the lamp beside the couch. Let's go back to bed, he said, brushing past me. He didn't kiss my forehead like he usually did. Didn't touch me. Didn't speak again. And for the first time in our marriage, we slept facing opposite directions. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something I could no longer ignore. My marriage had a crack in it. One deeper than grief, deeper than silence, deeper than distance. Something was hiding behind Daniel's steady gaze and quiet voice. Something old. Something unfinished. Something he didn't want me to see. And for the first time, a chilling thought crept into my mind. If he never ended that contract marriage, maybe it wasn't just paperwork he left behind. Maybe there was more. Much more. Maybe I wasn't the only woman living in a story built on lies. Betrayal doesn't come like thunder. It comes like a soft knock, a sound you almost ignore. Until the door swings open and everything you thought was solid gives way beneath your feet. For me, that door was Riverside. But before the trip, before the truth, before the unraveling, there was one moment that confirmed what my mother-in-law had already whispered. Something in my marriage was deeply, dangerously wrong. Daniel packed lightly, too lightly for a man who claimed he was going to sort through old work files. A single duffel bag. Toothbrush. A disposable razor. A shirt I'd never seen him wear before, tucked neatly into the side pocket. He didn't take his laptop, his notebooks, his work badge, his planner, his office keys. Things any man would need for work. But he did take cologne. The expensive one he only wore on anniversaries. That cologne alone felt like truth spilling out of a cracked container. I stood in the doorway, watching him put on his coat. My arms wrapped around myself like my own body was a stranger I didn't know how to comfort. When will you be home? I asked quietly. He paused. Just long enough for the lie to gather itself. Tomorrow evening. Late. His voice was smooth. Too smooth. Like he had practiced the answer. He leaned forward and kissed my cheek, not my lips, a kiss that felt more like a goodbye than a see you soon. I'll call you when I get there, he said. But he didn't. Not once. Around noon the next day, I was sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen like it might give me answers. My phone was in my hand. My heart was in my throat. No call. No text. Nothing. Not even a read receipt. Then, as if the universe needed me to stop giving him excuses, my phone vibrated. A message. From an unknown number. 3 words. Is he with you? My breath stopped. I typed slowly. Who is this? A few seconds passed. Then another message popped up. I'm his wife. The world went quiet. So quiet that I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. His wife. Not ex-wife. Not former contract partner. Not someone from his past. His wife. Present tense. Current. Real. My hands shook violently as I typed. No, his in Riverside. A pause. Then. So are we. I felt everything inside me collapse and harden at the same time. My stomach dropped. My throat tightened. My husband, the man I shared a home with, a bed with, grief with, was in Riverside with his other wife. Not a rumor. Not a suspicion. Not a theory. A fact. Delivered in black text on a cold screen. My eyes blurred as tears welled up. Cold, sharp tears that felt different from the ones I'd cried for my baby. These tears weren't for loss. They were for truth. And the truth wasn't gentle. The next message came with a photo. I wish I could say I didn't open it. But I did. Curiosity, pain, fear, they all pulled my finger across the screen. The photo showed a small brick house. A white sedan in the driveway, the same model as Daniel's, but older. And on the porch, Daniel. Standing beside a woman. Her hand resting lightly on his arm. He wasn't pulling away. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't distant. He looked normal. Relaxed. Familiar. He looked like himself. But not the version I knew. Another version. The version I'd suspected but didn't want to see. The woman typed again. I'm not trying to fight. I just need to know where he's been spending his money. Money. The savings he said we were building together. The emergency fund we had scraped for. The investments he kept private. Another message. He has kids here. He's their father. I thought you knew. Kids. Children. Plural. The air left my lungs in a rush. My hand covered my mouth. The room spun. My heart felt like it cracked open in the center, clean and sharp, like breaking glass. The miscarriage suddenly took on a new kind of weight. I wasn't grieving alone. I wasn't healing alone. I was grieving in a marriage that didn't just have cracks. It had an entire other life threaded through it. My fingers moved before my mind caught up. I called the number. The woman answered on the first ring. Her voice was quiet. Not angry. Not hostile. Just tired. Hello. I swallowed hard. This is. I'm Daniels. I hesitated. The word wife stuck in my throat like a stone. She finished for me. I know who you are. Her tone wasn't cruel. If anything, it held a strange sympathy. I've been trying to reach you for a long time, she said softly. But he blocked my number on your phone. Blocked. He blocked her so I wouldn't see. My legs trembled. I sat down slowly. How long? I whispered. She took a breath. 8 years. I closed my eyes. 8 years. 2 years longer than my marriage to him. Why now? I asked. Why reach out now? Her voice cracked. Because he started sending less money. And our kids, they need things. School. Food. Shoes. I didn't want to do this, but I can't keep pretending everything's okay. Her voice was warm, human, shaking the way truth shakes when it's been held too long. We're not married for love, she added. We were a contract at first. But life happened. Kids happened. And he stayed. She paused. Did he ever tell you about us? I tried to speak but no sound came out. My lips trembled. My chest ached. Finally, I whispered. He said it was annulled. She exhaled. A long, heartbreaking sound. I wish it had been, she murmured. For both our sakes. After the call ended, I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap, staring at nothing. Time felt thick, heavy, like air that had turned to water. I didn't sob. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just shut down. Everything around me faded into a dull hum. The clock ticking. The refrigerator humming. The faint traffic outside. My grief felt like a small, shaking creature curled up inside my chest. A miscarriage. A husband living a double life. A mother-in-law who knew everything and used my pain to reveal it. My world went from steady to splintered in a single afternoon. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that I'd been living side by side with a stranger. Someone who built 2 homes, 2 lives, 2 identities. and expected me to sit quietly in the shadow of his lies. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. My breathing finally steadied. My vision cleared. And then something inside me, something deep, something ancient, shifted. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was resolve. A quiet, steady, unyielding resolve. If Daniel thought I would crumble, if he thought grief would silence me, if he thought I'd accept this life he stitched together in the dark, he didn't know me at all. For the first time since the miscarriage, since the letter, since his mother's cruelty, I stood up, straightened my spine, wiped my cheeks, and whispered to myself, I'm going to find every truth he buried, and I'm going to dig until the whole foundation collapses. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the part where I stopped being afraid. Pain makes you still. Betrayal makes you shake. But clarity, true clarity, makes you move. And that day, sitting alone on my couch with the weight of 2 marriages pressed against my chest, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't going to wait for Daniel. I wasn't going to sit quietly for Eleanor. I wasn't going to let grief decide my future. If they weren't going to tell me the truth, I was going to take it. Piece by piece. Receipt by receipt. Lie by lie. My fingers hovered over the woman's number, the other wife. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know her name. I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't know who she believed she was in Daniel's life. But I knew one thing. She wasn't the enemy. She was living the same lie I was. Just on the other side of it. So I called her. She answered on the first ring, like she had been waiting. Hello. Her voice was softer this time, but tired, the kind of tired that sits in your bones. I swallowed hard. My name is Lila, I said. I think we need to talk. A silence stretched across the phone. A silence thick with pain and recognition. Then she whispered, I was hoping you'd say that. Not in Riverside. Not in my home. Not in hers. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could look each other in the eyes and decide whether we were allies or adversaries. We agreed on a small cafe halfway between our cities, a place with soft lighting and quiet music, the kind of place where secrets slide more easily into the open. I didn't drive there with anger. I didn't drive there with fear. I drove there with something steadier. Resolve. I arrived early. Ordered tea I didn't drink. Wiped my palms on my jeans. Watched the door like it held the answer to all the questions pounding in my head. And then she walked in. She was shorter than I expected. Her hair pulled into a tight bun. A simple coat, worn at the sleeves. Her eyes were tired in the way only mother's eyes are. She scanned the room, saw me, hesitated just for a moment and then walked over. Lila? Yes. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat down across from each other. And for a long moment, we simply stared. 2 women joined by the same man. The same lie. The same wound. She was the first to speak. My name is Naomi. Naomi. A beautiful name. Gentle. Human. I nodded. I'm glad you came. She exhaled shakily. I never wanted it to be like this. Her voice cracked. Neither did I. For the next hour, Naomi and I talked. Not like rivals. Not like strangers. Like survivors comparing maps of a battlefield they didn't know they'd been standing on. She told me everything. How she and Daniel met years ago, how the contract marriage was supposed to be temporary, a financial arrangement when she needed help with her sick mother. He moved in 4 appearances. They lived like strangers at first. And then, slowly, painfully, dangerously, they stopped being strangers. I didn't mean to fall for him, Naomi said quietly, her fingers circling the rim of her cup. He was kind then. He helped with my mom's treatments. He cooked sometimes. He never complained. I swallowed thickly. That was the Daniel I knew. Or thought I knew. How many kids? I asked gently. 2, she whispered. A boy and a girl. 8 and 6. My breath trembled. He had children. Living children. A whole life growing in the shadows of my marriage. And he never told you about me? I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. He told me he gained more responsibilities at work. He told me he was stressed. He said he had to spend more nights away because of his office. Lies. The same lies he fed me. She stared at her hands. And then the money started thinning. And he got nervous. And distant. And angry. My heart clenched. She looked up. When you got pregnant, she whispered, he got worse. I froze. What do you mean? He panicked, she said. Because your child, he said it would complicate everything. My stomach twisted violently. My throat burned. My miscarriage, I whispered. Did he know? She nodded slowly. He told me. But he didn't grieve. He just said it solved a problem. Something inside me snapped. A cold, clean break. Not rage. Not yet. But a new kind of clarity. One that made my bones feel sharper. Naomi wiped her eyes. I don't want him back, she said firmly. I'm not here to fight you. We were both deceived. I nodded. Neither do I. She exhaled in relief. I want to protect my kids, she said. And I want the truth out. All of it. For both of us. I straightened. So do I. We looked at each other, two women bound by betrayal. And in that moment, we made a silent agreement. We weren't going to be victims. We weren't going to compete. We weren't going to let him choose who deserved truth. We were going to work together. We were going to expose him. We were going to reclaim our lives. Naomi slid a small folder from her bag, worn, creased, full of quiet pain. I've been collecting things, she said. In case he ever tried to leave, or disappear. Inside were bank statements, withdrawal logs, receipts for gifts he never gave me, a rental lease in Riverside, 2 birth certificates, school registration forms, photographs, text messages. He had been splitting his life in 2 with the precision of a surgeon. But the truth was always there. In the paper trail. In the hesitation in his voice. In the shadows under his eyes. We'll need more, I said quietly. She nodded. I can get more, Naomi whispered. But it might upset the kids. My heart softened. We'll do this gently. Carefully. No harm to them. That was the moment Naomi finally broke. Not from pain. But from relief. She covered her face with both hands and cried. The kind of cry that had been waiting years to escape. And I reached across the table, placing my hand lightly on hers. We'll get through this, I said softly. Both of us. Just as we were packing up to leave, Naomi hesitated. There's something else, she said. I don't know if I should tell you. My stomach tightened. Tell me. She swallowed. He didn't let go of the contract marriage paperwork. Because it wasn't just a contract anymore. My eyes widened. What do you mean? She took a breath. It was supposed to end after a year. But then his father died. And your mother-in-law convinced him that keeping the marriage on paper was easier for inheritance. Inheritance. Legacy. Family name. All the words Eleanor wielded like weapons. She told him, Naomi continued shakily, that you weren't the right fit for their family. She told him. You were temporary. Temporary. A word that felt like a blade. And he believed her, Naomi said. The room spun. The miscarriage. The coldness. The distance. The lies. The lawyer's letter. The contract. The 2 families. It all led back to one person. Eleanor. She wasn't just cruel. She wasn't just cold. She had orchestrated everything. From the separation. To the lie. To the secret contract marriage. To the inheritance manipulation. To the quiet erasure of my place in the family. And she had waited for my weakest moment. My miscarriage. To tell me. So the pieces would shatter exactly as she intended. Naomi reached for my hand again. "We can do this," she said softly. "We can tell the truth. All of it." I took a deep breath. A calm, solid, unwavering breath. "Yes," I whispered. "We can. And we will." Because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. Or secrets. Or grief. It was about reclaiming my life. My identity. My name. It was about looking at the woman in the mirror and finally seeing someone who wasn't afraid to fight. Daniel had built 2 lives. His mother had pulled the strings. But now, I was done being a puppet. I was done being quiet. I was done being small. It was time to expose the truth. To bring consequences out of the shadows. To take back what was mine. And I wasn't going to do it alone. I had Naomi. And she had me. 2 wives. 1 lie. And a plan. Betrayal done in private can stay hidden for years. But betrayal done to 2 households, 2 women, 2 sets of children, that kind of truth has a way of clawing its way into the light. And once it does, it doesn't whisper. It screams. The day everything went public was not a day I planned. It wasn't a strategy meeting or a dramatic confrontation in a courtroom hallway. It was quiet. Ordinary. Almost gentle. The kind of day that fools you into thinking nothing major will happen. But endings don't always come with thunder. Sometimes they come with a knock on a door, a question asked too softly, a truth that slips out before anyone can catch it. And once it slipped, the rest followed. Daniel came home from Riverside 2 days after he left. He walked through the door like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't stood on another woman's porch. Like he hadn't held secrets that split 2 families down the middle. Like he hadn't broken the heart of 1 woman and weakened the world of another. He kissed my cheek lightly. A ghost of a kiss. The kind you give out of habit, not affection. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice calm. Too calm. I studied his face. The faint smudge of fatigue. The way he didn't meet my eyes. The way he kept one hand in his pocket, like he was holding on to something. "I'm okay," I lied. "Are you?" He smiled tight, rehearsed, brittle. "Of course. Just work stress." "Work stress." He said it like a reflex. He didn't notice I was watching him the way a woman watches a stranger wearing her husband's face. We sat at the dining table that evening. He pushed his dinner around the plate but barely ate. His mind was somewhere else, somewhere I had finally learned the address of. After several minutes of silence, I said softly, "Daniel, are you sure you want to keep lying to me?" He froze. His fork stopped mid-air. A flicker, panic, flashed in his eyes before he smothered it. "Lying? About what?" I folded my hands in my lap. My voice steady. Calm. Measured. "About Riverside. About the contract marriage. About Naomi. About the kids." His face drained of color. The room fell silent, so silent I could hear the refrigerator hum and the faint ticking of the wall clock. He set his fork down slowly. "Lila," he whispered, his voice cracking for the first time in months. "Who told you?" His first instinct wasn't to deny. It was to ask who exposed him. That was my answer. "I found out," I said quietly. "How long did you think you could hide this?" He dragged his hands over his face, exhaling shakily. His shoulders slumped. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he whispered. "It was complicated." A bitter laugh escaped me. "It wasn't complicated, Daniel. It was wrong. It was cruel. And you let me live in that cruelty." He winced. "I was trying to protect everyone," he said. "You, Naomi, the kids." "No," I cut in. "You were protecting yourself." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on the table, face in his hands. "I never wanted 2 families," he whispered. "It just happened. Children don't just happen." My voice trembled, but I held steady. You chose this. You lied your way into this. You stood in 2 homes like you were 2 men. His breath hitched. I was going to end things, he said quietly. Clean everything up. Make it right. When? I asked. When I miscarried. When your mother decided I wasn't good enough. When the money ran out. When you were caught. He didn't answer. Because the truth was written on his face. He had never planned to fix it. He had only planned to keep it hidden. Later that week, Naomi called. Not crying. Not frantic. Her voice was sharp. Controlled. Fierce. I've spoken to a lawyer, she said. And I think we need to do this together. My heart pounded. Do what? Bring him to court. For fraud. For bigamy. For financial deception. For emotional harm. My breath caught. I'm scared, I whispered. So am I, she said. But being scared won't protect us. Truth will. We met the next day with her lawyer, a woman with cool eyes, a calm voice, and a spine made of steel. She didn't blink when we told her the story. When we finished, she said, bigamy cases are rare, but they're not impossible. Especially not when there are children involved. Especially not when you have evidence. Evidence. Naomi had the paperwork. I had the lawyer's letter. We both had text messages, financial discrepancies, timelines. We'll file together, the lawyer said. Joint plaintiffs. It will show unity, not rivalry. Naomi placed her hand on mine under the table. We're in this together, she whispered. He divided us for years. We won't let him do it again. The moment Eleanor found out, not from me, but from the lawyer's notice, she appeared at my doorstep like a storm cloud draped in pearls. Her knock was sharp. Authoritative. Cold. I opened the door just enough to face her. Lila, she said briskly, we need to discuss this matter before you make a fool of yourself. I raised an eyebrow. This matter? You mean your son's bigamy? His children? Or the fact that you hid the truth from me? Her jaw tightened. You're upset. I understand. Miscarriage can. I stepped forward, my voice low and steady. Do not use my miscarriage to control this conversation. For the first time, she faltered. Just slightly. Daniel made mistakes, she said carefully. But those children, that arrangement, it was supposed to remain private. So you knew, I whispered. She didn't deny it. You let me marry him. A ceremony, she corrected stiffly. Not a marriage. I stared at her. You weaponized my grief. Her nostrils flared. Don't be dramatic. I smiled then. A small, cold, tired smile. I'm not being dramatic, I said gently. I'm being honest. And then I closed the door. Right in her face. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I simply closed it. That was the moment I realized. Some battles aren't won by yelling. Some battles are won by refusing to shrink. A week later, Daniel received the court summons. He stormed into the house, paper clenched in his fist, face red with panic. What is this? He demanded. You filed against me? Both of you? I looked up from the kitchen counter, calm as a still pond. Yes. His voice cracked. You're destroying my life. No, I said softly. You destroyed your life. We're just refusing to live inside the wreckage. He sank onto the couch, trembling. What will people think? He whispered. At least now. I said quietly. They'll know the truth. He buried his face in his hands. For the first time, I felt nothing. Not tenderness. Not sympathy. Just closure beginning to take shape. Court wasn't dramatic. There were no raised voices. No tears. No scandals. Just facts. Naomi beside me. Our lawyer steady and fierce. Daniel pale and shaking. Eleanor seated behind him, clutching her pearl necklace like it might protect her from shame. Every document we presented sliced through the lies he'd spent years stitching together. Every timeline. Every receipt. Every birth certificate. Every message. When the judge spoke, her voice was firm. Mr. Dalton, your actions constitute fraud, intentional deception, and bigamy. You will be held accountable. The consequences were heavy. Financial penalties. Custody arrangements. Mandatory child support. A legal dissolution of a marriage that was never real to begin with. A formal record of his deception. Eleanor's face went stone cold. Daniel's eyes stayed on the floor. Naomi reached over and squeezed my hand. Not as rivals. Not as co-victims. But as women reclaiming their power. The truth was no longer hidden. It wasn't whispered in halls or locked in drawers. It was public. Recorded. Real. And it wasn't shameful anymore. It was freeing. People talk in small towns. People whisper in office corridors. People wonder why a polished man with a perfect smile is suddenly unraveling. Some people looked at me with pity. Some with pride. Some with shame on my behalf. But I learned something important. People's opinions don't wound you when the truth has already healed the deepest cut. I walked with my head high. Not because I wasn't hurting. But because I had survived something designed to break me. And Eleanor. She could no longer pretend. No longer control the narrative. No longer hold the family legacy over anyone's head. Her empire of appearances fell in one quiet, decisive court ruling. And Daniel. He faced the world he built. Not the one he pretended to have. The truth was public. The consequences had landed. And now came the part that mattered most. Healing. Healing for me. Healing for Naomi. Healing for the children. Healing from the life Daniel shattered. And the one we were finally free to rebuild. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't knock politely. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Healing begins in small, unexpected moments. A steady breath. A quiet morning. A truth spoken without shaking. A choice made for yourself and no one else. My healing began the day after court. Not with celebration. Not with relief. But with silence. A silence that didn't feel empty. A silence that finally felt like mine. For the first time in years, I woke up without Daniel's shadow in the house. The sun filtered through the curtains in soft strips, landing across the wooden floors. The air felt still, but not heavy. Quiet, but not lonely. I lay there for a while, listening to nothing but my own breathing. It was strange how peaceful silence could feel when it wasn't carved by deception. I got out of bed slowly, stretching my limbs, noticing the absence of fear tightening my ribs. I walked into the kitchen and made tea. For me, not for anyone else. The kettle's whistle didn't sound sharp anymore. It sounded like a beginning. While my tea steeped, I slipped out onto the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. For once, I didn't think about where Daniel was. Or who he was lying to. Or which home he was pretending belonged to him. I thought about myself. And that alone felt revolutionary. Healing didn't erase the miscarriage. It didn't erase the image of 2 lines on a pregnancy test. It didn't erase the sharp, breath-stealing pain or the doctor's soft, sorrowful tone. But slowly, the grief shifted. It didn't sit on my chest every morning anymore. It curled into something quieter, gentler. A memory instead of a wound. One afternoon, I found the little knitted blanket I'd bought when I first found out I was pregnant, the soft yellow one that matched the nursery idea I'd never admit aloud. Instead of collapsing into tears, I held it gently, closed my eyes, and whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep you. But I'm learning to keep myself." And somehow, that felt like a step forward. Naomi and I stayed in touch. Not constantly. Not desperately. But with the kind of consistency shared by women who walked through fire together. One Saturday, she invited me to a small park near her home. "I want you to meet them," she said softly. "If you're ready." I hesitated. My heart twisted. But I knew that healing required truth. Even the kind that hurt. So I went. The park was quiet, filled with the sound of distant laughter and birds overhead. Naomi stood near a bench, her expression nervous but hopeful. The children ran circles in the grass. A boy with bright eyes and a fearless grin. A girl with soft curls and a shy smile. When Naomi called them over, they ran to her first. Their safe place, their anchor. And then they looked at me. Not frightened. Not resentful. Just curious. "Who's she?" the boy asked. Naomi looked at me, asking permission with her eyes. I nodded. "She's a friend," Naomi said gently. "A very important friend." The girl stepped closer, studying me with wise, careful eyes far older than her years. "You look sad," she said quietly. Her honesty cracked something open inside me. I knelt down to her level. "I've been sad," I said softly. "But I'm learning how to be okay again." She nodded solemnly, as if she understood more than any child should. Then she did something I never expected. She reached out and held my hand. Not for long. Just a moment. But it was enough. Enough to remind me that innocence survives even the worst betrayals. Enough to remind me that Daniel's wrongdoing didn't belong to these children. Their existence wasn't a wound. It was a truth. A truth I needed to face with compassion. For them. For Naomi. And for myself. Healing isn't glamorous. It's not a montage of yoga mats and green smoothies. Healing is sorting old photos and deciding which ones to keep. Changing the sheets on a bed that once held lies. Deleting contacts. Blocking numbers. Returning keys. Sitting alone at a cafe just to hear your own thoughts. Crying once a week instead of every day. Laughing at something unexpectedly funny. Sleeping through the night again. Looking in the mirror and not seeing a broken woman. Just a woman. A woman still standing. I went back to work slowly. My co-workers didn't pry. Most of them had seen the lawsuit online. And their compassion was quiet, respectful. I started journaling again. Started walking around the neighborhood at dusk. Started cooking meals that tasted like comfort instead of routine. For the first time in years. I wasn't performing a version of myself for anyone. I was simply me. Healing doesn't erase anger. But it does make you strong enough to handle it. One cold morning, Daniel showed up at my door. No warning. No call. Just his shadow across my window. I opened the door a crack. He looked different. Thinner. Exhausted. Hollow-eyed. "Lila," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't invite him in." "Are you sorry?" I asked softly. "For what you did? Or for getting caught?" He exhaled shakily, eyes glistening. "For everything." I didn't soften. Not out of cruelty. But out of truth. "I hope," I said gently, "you learn from all of this. I hope you become better. For your children. For yourself." He looked at me with a mix of regret and disbelief. "So that's it. You're done with me?" I nodded. "Yes. I'm done with the version of me who stayed quiet. I'm done with the version of me who believed your lies. I'm done living in the shadow of your choices." He dropped his gaze. "You deserve better," he whispered. "I do," I said. "And I'm choosing better." I closed the door. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, definitively. Months passed. The court assigned proper support arrangements. Naomi's children settled into a routine. I found a new therapist, a new morning ritual, a new sense of self. One evening, sitting on my porch with a warm cup of tea, I realized something. I didn't hate Daniel anymore. I didn't fear Eleanor anymore. I didn't resent Naomi. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Forgiveness didn't arrive as a grand gesture. It arrived as peace. Quiet, steady peace. Forgiving him wasn't letting him off the hook. Forgiving him was letting myself off the hook. I released the version of me who lived in confusion. I released the pain I blamed myself for. I released the shame of staying too long in a story that wasn't mine. And in the space that remained, something new began growing. Hope. I started volunteering at a women's support group once a week. A circle of women healing from different kinds of betrayal, different kinds of loss, different kinds of reinvention. I told parts of my story when it felt right. Not for sympathy, but for connection. Sometimes healing means giving your pain a purpose. Sometimes healing means letting your story reach the ears of someone who needs it. I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's courage wearing softness. And slowly, steadily, gently, I began building a life that wasn't shaped by Daniel, or Eleanor, or the ghost of a contract marriage, or even by grief. It was shaped by me. A woman still standing. A woman still believing. A woman still choosing herself. Again. And again. And again.